Hello, today I'm going to be going over how to make hair for a human character. As you can see here, I have the base model, the male base model, right, already loaded into Blender. This is what we are going to be doing the practice on. I'm going to be doing the example on. So, first thing I recommend always doing with every model is loading up a background image. Here I've already chosen my background image, as you can see. I'm going to be doing it based on the Link hair from Hyrule Warriors, I believe. As with every model, like I said, you want to have a reference. In this case, there's not a solid front and side view, which is what I would prefer, but in this case, I'm using just a regular image loaded into Blender for reference, so I can just look at it without having to change screens. So, first things first is you're going to start with your base model. So I'm going to hit tab to go into edit view here. And basically I'm going to select the faces that I'm going to want to base my hair mesh off of. So basically it's going to be the scalp. And then I hit Shift D to duplicate, and then I hit P to separate the selection. And then I want to separate the selection by doing separate selection. So now it's a different object. So you can see here it's separate, while still leaving the original scalp intact. So I'm going to hit tab to go into edit mode for that. So now here is the hair mesh. So basically we can start extruding our shapes off of this. So Link's hair is pretty asymmetrical, so I'm not going to turn on mirror mode for this mesh, this specific mesh here. So the first thing you want to do is you want to look at the general shapes. So you can see here that Link has this sort of large side swooping bangs here, and he has a smaller similarly shaped one here. And then he has two like sideburns that come down in front of his ears, and then the back of his hair, if anybody's familiar with it, is just sort of like a PC short hair, medium short haircut. So you want to start by extruding the shapes, the larger shapes first. So you're not going to start by immediately extruding out each piece like this. So you can see that this piece comes down, this chunk comes down, and is like this shape. And then from that shape, then you see these extra pieces extruding from that. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and do. And personally, I like to work in a variety, for this specific style, I like to work in a variety of vertex and face selection mode. So it starts about there. So I'm going to do this, so it looks like this is two separate sections. This one looks like it's tucked behind his ear like that. And then this one's the front part in front of his bangs. So I'm going to extrude those two separately. Oh, see, I have I have X mirror on accidentally. Okay, there we go. So you can see here I started creating the bangs area. Now I want to make it start to go downwards, so I'm going to adjust position these so that the faces are starting to point down. And don't worry about your materials or faces clipping at this point. You want to generally avoid stuff like this. But, you know, if you do have that, that's not the end of the world. I'm actually going to add an edge loop with the cut tool. So when you use the cut tool, you always want to start on a vertex, cut through your edges, and then you want to end on another vertex. That'll prevent you getting some like weird n-gons and stuff like that. So you can see here I have actually, it created 2 vertexes at the same spot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the whole thing, hit W, remove doubles, and you can see now it's back to 1. And I'm going to move these up here. So you can see that prevents some of the weird clipping issues we were having here, as well as on this side. I'm going to extrude these now. So I'm going to go for this swoop shape now. So I like to block in the general shape before I start refining the shape. So I'm trying to get this shape here so I can extrude these individual pieces to get the sort of pieciness of hair. So see, that looks about right. Looks like it's a little bit narrower up at the top, so it's kind of like a wing shape. And then it also has this generous curve there, so we're going to follow that. So you can see I'm starting to get the shape in, the general shape in. I'll just adjust these here so they're not sticking way out in space. And I'm going to rotate them to give his hair a little bit of body, scale against the y-axis. There we go. Okay. So now that we have the general shape of that piece down, we can go ahead and start extruding these points to like make the hair look wispier, so just like blocky. So I'm gonna actually add another loop here because I think that could benefit. Actually adjust this here. There we go. And when you're doing this, you can actually go ahead and, so usually when you're doing character work, you want to make sure that you're always keeping a quad, as much quad as you can, and you want to keep as many regular quads as you can. When you're doing stuff like hair or objects, stuff that's going to be a little bit more stationary, you can take a few more liberties. You still want to generally keep things as much quad as you can because it just makes editing later on easier if you need to, but in this case I'm going to actually cut a few triangles so that we can create more pieces of hair from just these 3 faces down here. So I'm going to select these edges and hit W, and then I'm going to subdivide them. So you can see the subdivision gives me basically end gone here, here, and here, and get on the other side. So what you're going to do is you're going to come over to here. If you don't see this open, you just hit T to bring it up. And you're going to actually scroll down and hit quad and tri mode. So that makes it so that any subdivision, the adjoining faces will always be stay quad or triangles. So, okay, so now I can adjust these to get the shape of the pieces. So it looks like it's 2 smaller ones and it gets generally thicker. And it looks like this one might be too many, so I'm going to hit X and then get rid of the edge loop. So that actually didn't work. Usually it'll get rid of the edge loop without, it's sort of magical. It just gets rid of the edge loop and you don't have to do much more, but I'm just going to merge these together. There we go. Looks like I may have missed the shape a little bit. It's a little bit more flared out at the bottom. A little bit more tapered at the top. Okay. Okay, so it looks like I'm ready to Let me actually merge these two. I don't think that's really necessary to have all that. Okay. So I got my first two smaller ones here, and you can see this is going to be the smallest one, and then it's going to get bigger, and then bigger, and then the biggest. So I'm going to extrude these each. And actually you can extrude each face at the same time. So you're going to hit Alt-E, and then you hit individual faces. So see now, hit Alt-E, individual faces, and then see now they're all extruded as individual faces, whereas hitting E would extrude it as a group. So I'm just going to go like that. And then I'm going to scale against the individual origins, so see each face gets smaller on its own. And then I'm going to extrude once more, Alt-M, and then collapsing will basically collapse each face in on itself to one vertex. So now all that's left is to basically reshape this. Bring points in, since the extruded they went out a little bit. And I'm going to actually have this hug his head a little bit more, so basically right now I'm just positioning the vertexes to make the quads more normal, so that the shading looks a little bit nicer. See, this is something that you generally don't want there. See how it's like torquing there. And see, now it's a more normal quad, so now the engine is better, it knows better how to calculate the shading on that face. And this just seems like an unnecessary vertex, so I'm going to merge that one to that one. So that way I'm conserving one triangle, which does not seem like a whole lot right now, but as soon as you start getting up into like high poly stuff, saving one triangle here and there can be a big deal. Okay. So, yeah. Looks like maybe this one's a little bit. I'm gonna actually give this one a little bit more curve too. And this one as well, I think. It's not a bad idea to avoid adding more loops until you have the general shape down. So in this case, I probably could have continued to refine the bend of the hair with the foreheads before I added these loops in, but live and let live, right? Because the fewer vertices you have, the easier it's going to be to manipulate the shape into what you want. Okay, so we have bangs there. So then you're going to basically continue doing a similar technique around the rest of the head until you've got basically the hair shape that you want. Once you add in all the different shapes, that gives you basically the general hair shape, then you're going to want to kind of go through and create a little bit of depth with the polygons, and I'm going to show you that next. And I'm going to pause the video right now and fill out the rest of the hair, and then I'll show you the next steps. Okay, so I'm unpausing here, even though I haven't finished my hair, because I want to show you another technique. So you can see I've deleted some of the vertices from on the scalp here. The reason being because if I extruded the way I did here, the hair, this chunk of hair would look separate from this chunk of hair, which in the art it seems like it's much more together and just part of it's tucked behind his ear. So what I'm going to do is I actually deleted some of these vertices, and I think I'm going to delete these ones as well. Turn this into a triangle, and delete this vertices. So now I've got this patch where the hair kind of connects to the scalp. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select where I want the new chunk of hair to start coming from, and I'm going to actually extrude these edges up into the shape that and while I'm doing, the whole time I'm doing this, I'm going to be reshaping the vertexes into the new shape I want. I'm going to go over and I think I'm going to make these triangles here because I want them to join, so it look like they're sort of coming from the same place. And let's see, select these. Come on. And then I'm just going to have it, this is where it's going to connect to the scalp, so. And you can see here, I got some weird shading. That's because when you extrude edges, your normals can sometimes get weird. So you select all with A, and then you hit Control N, and you can see it's still kind of weird. That's because part of it's smooth shading and part of it's flat shading. So as you can see, that corrected the issue there. And now I'm just adjusting some of these vertices to get the correct shading I want when it's lit in the engine. And it looks like I'm not going to be able to quite accomplish what I want with this many. Maybe I can do this. Yeah, that's probably good. So here I hit F and I create an N-gon. I can hit T to triangulate that. And then Blender will triangulate it in the smartest way that it can think of. Okay, so now that I've got that shape, I basically am going to continue with the techniques I showed you before. Basically, I'm going to continue refining this into the shape that I want. But you might be wondering, this is empty underneath. So the underneath of the hair and the end, we're just going to end up creating a single. We're going to merge all the edges together so that we don't have any, if somebody like looks underneath the hair, they're not going to see alpha, but basically the underneath is not super important. It just needs to be sort of defined. So in this case, let's see. And triangulate it so that way. Okay. And then we're going to make a face like that, triangulate again. So see, now we have the inside, I had the head. Now we have the inside of this here, that's filled in. And then we also have the bottom here. So this part, we're going to need to cut this again with the knife tool. And so now I've made kind of a wacky quad, so I'm just going to want to triangulate that. And now I'll hide my base. You can see that again. And then I'm just going to extrude these as I showed you before. And I think actually the chunk stays together going behind the ears, so I'm going to extrude this all together instead of into separate pieces for now. I'm just moving it out so it's not exactly on top of the scalp, so you can still see the faces a little better. Now we're going to extrude like that. And actually I'm gonna end up deleting that vertex there. Don't need it after all. And so see here, actually I can merge these together so it continues the illusion that the hair is still connected to the head instead of like just adjacent to it. Shape these around the ear. Tuck it in a little bit. And now we're going to extrude the pieces. And then adjust the position. And this is just all stuff that I went over before with the first chunk of hair. Do some scaling. And then I'm going to end up adding another loop here to reshape the hair, but as you can see, now it looks like it's got the illusion of the hair going behind his ear. So I'm going to repause the video, continue shaping out the hair. If I come up with another technique, you'll see them. Okay, so I started working with sideburns. One little technique, basically I extruded from the side. One technique I did use that I didn't actually show you is simple enough to explain. Basically I duplicated a piece of the hair, and I just duplicated it and moved it into place where I wanted a second strand of hair to be. So you can see when the trick here is it has to be underneath, so you won't really see the joining too much, but you can see here it's a separate line, so it'll shape nicely. But yeah, basically you want to make sure you're hiding the tail under there. So I'm going to actually do a similar technique here to duplicate the sideburn to the other side. So I'm going to select the faces over here that I want to use, and I'm just going to hit Shift D to duplicate it. I'm going to grab it across the x-axis, and then I'm going to scale x -1. So that scales it, just flips it the other way. And because it's going to be underneath this bangs swoop portion, it doesn't really matter if it's extruded from it or just coming from it or what. So rather than go through the hassle of having to recreate it all, I'm just going to duplicate it. Oh, and so I want to make sure I've got it. There we go. There we go. then basically I'm just going to position it so it's underneath the hair. You can see here. I think I'm going to adjust this segment here so it looks like it fills out a little bit more. And I'm going to move this out a little bit more so it looks like it's coming over this piece of hair rather than this hair intersecting it. Move these in a little bit. Because that's what we want it to look like, essentially. It's like the sideburns are coming out underneath this swoop. And there we go. It's intersecting the ears a little weird. Honestly, you don't have to worry too much about this as long as it's not like obviously clipping. That's the most important part. But some clipping like this, generally not going to be noticeable, and it's actually better because it looks like the hair is just falling against the face rather than like floating above it. So for the most part, you don't have to worry too much about clipping, as long as it looks natural. So you can see here, I've got my sideburns now on both sides. And I'm just going to show you the rest of the techniques in real time here. I don't think I want to go for too much detail in the back of the hair because I do have a lot of detail in the front. But I am going to just do some basic extrusions at the bottom of the hair to make it, or just extend the bottom of the hair so it's not just like a straight crew cut. So I'm just going to select all of these and then extrude it outwards. So this is basically just lengthening the hair. And I'm scaling it, omitting the x-axis, so that's done by hitting Shift X after hitting scale. And now I want to scale against the x-axis. And I think I'm going to have it just come down a little bit and flare out as well. Extrude again, scale omitting the x. And then I'm just going to scale X so it flares out a little bit. Just a little bit. Okay. So now is the part where we can do the extrude individual faces again, and that'll give us little wisps of hair. Generally you want to avoid extruding it like in a grid pattern like this, so I'm going to just tweak some of these around so you get sort of irregular hair pieces. So it doesn't all look like it's coming from the same grid-like layout of hair. Just basically breaking up the symmetry of it. Scale those down, and I'm just going to point these because I don't think this needs too much detail. And then you're just going to reshape to make the shape fit what you're looking for. So in this case, I'm going to do sort of a layered look where the top pieces are a little bit smaller. The bottom pieces are a little bit thicker and longer. And I might need to loop cut these a little bit, so I'm going to select these faces here. Oops. I'm going to select these faces here, hit W, subdivide, just grab that, scale it up, and do the same with these ones here. Just because they are on the thicker side. And I'm going to do that with the edge ones too. I don't want to do it with every single one because I don't think it's necessary, but this will give the hair that little flare that I'm looking for at the bottom. I should move this tip out. And I'm going to do that with some of these up here too. just to make the pieces a little bit more small and a little bit more defined. But I like the way the outer ones pieces look, so I'm going to leave those. I'm just going to tweak that. I should probably flare out like this as well, both directions. So just flaring outwards, you'd think it would probably flare backwards too. Scale gets the Y just to get the hair a little bit more volume. I'm just going to add this all back to the hair just to fix my materials really quick. Okay. Oh, there we go. And so now see I've got some weird blocky patterns because I just haphazardly extruded. I'm just going to fix those. At this point it's really just about reshaping, keeping an eye out, looking at it from all angles, making sure everything looks good. So the last technique I'm going to show you guys is something that's not really necessary, but it does just add a little bit more character to your hair, especially when you're doing toon shading. So you can see I did it a little bit here, but basically on the sideburns, but basically it's it comes down to smartly subdividing and inserting loop cuts. So in the back of the hair, not really much going on here, kind of simple, pretty straightforward. So I'm going to ignore that because we don't really need the extra polygons back here. But in the front of the hair, this big swoop is pretty dramatic, and is the same with the side one. So what we're going to do is basically we're going to add in some cuts to make it look like the hair is piecing. So you're just going to follow it up, and I like to just have it all taper at one point, sort of one point. So from here, then basically then I'm going to just tweak these so that they still have nice edge flow. Make this a face. And then I'm going to cut up here. And then like that. So you can see here I've created, it goes almost like a banana shape, I guess. So you've got like the middle line here, which is surrounded by two outer ones. So these two outer ones are going to be the indentation, and this upper one is going to be the depth of the hair, if you will. So now you just move them so that when you have the shading going on, it's actually going to bounce light off, and you'll get a shadow here, and you'll get some nice shading effects without having extra, you won't have like, it'll be dynamic basically, texturing, so you're like doing it without a normal map. You could do this with a normal map, but it's really up to you. But yeah, so in this one I don't think I necessarily need to do every single one, so in this case I could do like this. Make this a face. Remember, if you do every single piece, it's going to look a little bit unnatural. So, you know, pick and choose which ones you're going to do. In this case, this one's maybe underneath the other two pieces. So yeah, like, and then I can just add a cut here to make this more dramatic. I'll start inside here to like really define this shading here. I'm just going to join these because that doesn't need to be. Oh, and I'm going to actually remove my doubles. Seems like I've got a couple of those. So yeah, now as you can see, it looks like this piece is coming out from underneath this hair here. And I'm actually going to join that to that because that doesn't seem like we need to have two of those. There. Well, you're just going to do that where you think your hair needs a little bit of extra detail, a little bit of extra volume. You know, that's going to provide some extra layers of interest when you're looking at the hair in game. I would probably do it here. You know, the sideburns, pretty simple, and the back of the hair is also, again, very simple, and nobody's going to be really looking at it. What you might also do is you might create a loop cut. You might create a cut here for part. I'll show you that really quick. A lot of people part their hair down the side, or down the middle, sorry, in a style like this, and then you just would tweak the hair on either side. And so that also is going to provide another little bit of interest too when it's rendered in game. And then finally, to finish off the hair, what you're going to do is, so you don't want to have any sort of clip, you don't want to have any you don't want to have any instance where the player is going to be able to see underneath the hair. I mean, it's not really a big deal, but it's just a little bit more unclean finish looking, so you're going to hide, I'm going to hide this just so you can see the inside better. But basically you're going to select the pieces of hair and you're just going to select all the edges that connect on the inside. And I don't really need these faces here, I suppose. There we go. A little bit nicer. So I'm going to just select these faces once more. So you can see I've got a continuous loop of faces selected. I'm going to hit extrude and then hit Alt M and then merge at the center. So now all the hair is connected. So if I unhide my character model, it would be slightly more dramatic and a different hairstyle, but basically there's not going to be a time when the player is going to be able to look underneath the hair by accident and see like the missing patch. There's just a quick way to finish up your hair. So then just continue pushing and pulling the polygons to get the shape you're looking for. For me, this is not quite done. I'd probably go through and do the thing I did with the bangs I showed you earlier. Do that to the side. But yeah, pretty much that's it. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I look forward to seeing some of the hair you come up with. Bye!